that we are starting this class. This is a microeconomic class. This is different than macroeconomics. And as we go forward, you will yourselves be able to differentiate between micro and macroeconomics. But let me try to make this class a little bit more interactive. So let's try to understand that why microeconomics. So this is the basic question which comes to my mind or our mind. And so if I were to ask you that, I don't know whether you have had chance to go through the first chapter, but anyone, why we need to study microeconomics? Random thought process, whatever comes to your mind, please feel free to share. You don't have to feel shy, or because this is a, the more we discuss, the more you will retain what we are discussing. So any volunteer, why microeconomics?
So to have a choice, to choose a select, to choose a great choice in
Okay,
the phase
so
of it.
one thing is choice, right? Any
Yes.
any other
So,
any other
to contribute the economic welfare of a particular organization or country.
welfare?
Make a decision between two products,
Okay,
two
So
among products.
to understand how things vary with
make
the
or
different variables.
prioritize our
Um,
choice.
I feel to know every individual and their consumption, their needs, and their wants, so that decisions can be made to fulfill their satisfaction levels.
Okay, satisfaction. Now, there are a few things. So first, try to understand choice. The first thing which one of you said that we want to make choice, and someone else also said that we need to prioritize between choosing between good one vis-a-vis good two. For that matter, we can prioritize our choice across variety of basket of goods and services. So the question is, how do we prioritize? So uh, and someone else said it is more in the connotation of maybe that will we will discuss in a little bit from now, is in the context of welfare, uh, and someone else said satisfaction. Okay, any other points that comes to your mind? So because the question was why microeconomics, out of variety of inputs which were made or suggested, you think the answer, because this is the question, right? Why microeconomics? So one of the answer can be is we want to prioritize our decision making or choice. So that is one uh, way to understand that why microeconomics. Now the second question which I have, so let's try to stick with this particular thing, which is choice, and then how do we prioritize our choice. Uh, so now let's try to come to, if I were to stick to this thing, uh, let's try to understand that what does choice means, or what does you mean when we say choice, what does it mean? Any input?
Yes, sir. So basically, why choices are important? It is because we have limited resources. We
Very
have
good.
scarcity of resources,
Yes.
and to optimize and uh, make the best out of the those limited resources, we have to make the efficient choices.
Okay. Okay. Very well said. So the first is the scarcity, because if there were no scarcity, I could whatever I want. Uh, it is possible for me to get that particular goods and services. But because there is scarcity, and the moment we are using the word scarcity, the thing which comes to our mind is we also have limited money income, right? Because if we have limited money income and we are asked to buy goods and services, we basically uh, have to determine that out of variety of goods and services which are available, which one among them we should try to buy or prioritize in terms of spending. So that is so much so about the choice. Now let me come to the next part, which is how we know that. So how we uh, prioritize. So I think Vachi was suggesting that we need to make a
Yes.
choice, because who said this? Just few
Yes,
minutes.
sir. Sir,
Yeah,
Vachi.
Vachi. Yeah. So we need to make choice because resources are scarce, and to which I said that resources are scarce because we also have limited money income. But then also you can argue that, well, what about uh, the owner of Reliance industry, or because for them money income is not limited. But if you think carefully, even for them, the choice matters, because at the end of the day, they are in the business of making more money, and therefore, whether to invest in project A vis-a-vis project B becomes important, because it might so happen that project B is not going to give you return, and therefore, as as the owner, Mukesh Ambani may decide that let's invest on geo platform rather than investing on, let's say, more oil gas refinery type of activities, because the price of crude oil is not going up, and India, as you know, that is one of the largest exporter of refined petroleum product, and therefore, with the price not going up, uh, maybe from the perspective of decision making, although Mukesh Ambani has got immense amount of wealth and money, but from the perspective of making a choice, making a decision as to where to invest further, it it matters, because now what I'm going to say, that why we prioritize, because we said that there are scarcity of resources. Now in the context of uh, oil gas refinery, and in the context of, let's say, telephone, as you know, that penetration of internet services in India is still one of the least in the among the largest growing fast economies, and therefore there is a potential huge market for and money to make if a business decision were to be made on the basis of where you can get additional uh, return on your investment, on which project it will generate the maximum income. So whenever we are talking about scarcity, please note one aspect is our money income is limited, you know and even if the money income is not limited, then that from the perspective of business decision making, uh, you want to invest in activities where the marginal value addition from that investment is highest. Now I have used the word. Now these are each one of these words are very important. When I said that the marginal value addition, so we are basically going back to this concept of satisfaction, because someone else mentioned that satisfaction. So what will be more satisfying for a business magnate like Mukesh Ambani? It would be that from where, if he were to invest or choose between variety of investment opportunity, from where he is going to get the maximum return. On the contrary, if you were thinking of something like a consumer, let's say that you are walking on a hot summer day and you get very thirsty, So what is the first thing you would like to do? You would like to look around and see that whether you get some way to get some water, to quench your thirst. Now, let's say that you come across one coconut seller, and you are so much so thirsty, you basically don't want to negotiate the price. You just want to have that coconut, And so for the first unit that you consume, and the satisfaction that you get from that first unit consumption, it is the maximum, right? Because as you start consuming more and more liter of coconut water, the marginal value addition from consuming one more additional unit of coconut water keeps on falling. Why? Because for the first unit, you are very thirsty. You don't mind. You don't try to haggle with the coconut seller. You just, whatever price he's asking, you are just giving that price, giving that coconut, negotiating without negotiating much. You just have that coconut water. Now, for the second unit, let's say you are still thirsty. Then you may think twice that, well, this guy is charging a higher price, and therefore you would like to negotiate a little bit more. Now, starting from the third and fourth, of course, for the fourth one, you don't want to have or consume any more amount of coconut water because you have already quenched your thirst. But what I'm trying to argue here is, with each additional unit of investment of that particular goods, what is happening is the amount of money that you are willing to pay for getting that one more additional unit of goods and services keeps on falling, starting with the first. So few things you should keep in mind. First of all, this is it's a kind of dynamic, in the sense that the choice that we are discussing, this choice thing, if I were to therefore argue, this choice, in a way, it is dynamic, in the sense that at a given point of time, if you are thirsty, the amount of satisfaction that you get, by consuming the first unit of coconut water is much, much higher compared to when you consume at that point of time the second unit, the third unit, so on and so forth. So as you keep on consuming more and more coconut water at that given point in that given time frame, your willingness to pay keeps on falling, and beyond a point you would not like to consume, because by that time you have already quenched your thirst, and therefore the satisfaction that we get, we say that it follows diminishing marginal return, or in the context of microeconomics, this satisfaction is also kind of captured in the form of utility. So utility and satisfaction are kind of synonymous, because we want to quantify, in the sense that this is also called ordinal. Ordinal means that more is better, So this thing is also called ordinal. Now, ordinal basically is saying, let me try to give you another example. Now, let's say that you are the same you are trying to negotiate with the first unit of coconut water in Delhi, and same you have visited your village town, and there you are negotiating, and you are at the same level of let's say you are same way thirsty as you were, and you are negotiating the price in some remote village in India. Of course, the amount of money that you have to pay for one unit of coconut water in Delhi is going to be much higher than what you have to pay in some remote villages in India. So when I say ordinal, it means that even though you are paying a higher price in Delhi, the level of satisfaction that you get from having one unit of coconut water, it is same level of satisfaction that you will get by having the same unit of coconut water when you are having that in some village area on a hot summer day. So in case of microeconomic theory, basically you should understand this principle: more is better. So more is better, this MIB stand for more is better. Now more is better in a way means that I am always going to prefer 2 coconuts vis-a-vis 1 coconut. But the catch is, because at any given time frame, the marginal utility from consuming each additional coconut water is falling. Therefore, at any given time frame, for each additional coconut water that I am willing to consume, the amount of price that I am willing to pay for that additional unit of coconut water is going to fall. Is that clear? Any question? So therefore, this whole concept of microeconomics is based on this criteria that it is also called the classical school of thought. This is also called the classical school of thought. So the classical school of thought means that as we keep on consuming the same amount of goods and services, the marginal return from consuming the additional goods and services at that point of time keeps on falling. And therefore I use the word also, this you should also keep in mind that this concept, this preference structure can change over a period of time, meaning that if I have taken coconut water sometime in let's say during daytime, I still may find thirsty during night, and therefore it is very important that at any given point of time, what is happening is, so we have discussed the scarcity in terms of money income. We have also discussed scarcity in terms of the business decision making, because at the end of the day, everything boils down to these 2 things, which I am saying that in terms of whether we are willing to pay more or less. So Anchit, are you there? I want all of you to switch on the video because I'm not able to see you. Because then I will not be able to give you attendance. Anchit, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please switch on your video, please.
Yes, sir. It's on, sir.
Yeah. Abhishek, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, Prakrit,
So,
so the question is, what we are trying to, will all of you please switch on the video because this is part of the university rule that we are trying to follow. Can you just, this goes for all of you in the class. What about Vishesh?
yes, sir.
Yeah, switch on your video, please. Saurabh?
Sir, my video is on, sir.
Okay. So you can just mute yourself and put on your video so that we can interact. Now the question is, uh, in microeconomics, if I were to uh, look into the, let's say, the why part, and if we want to understand that why microeconomics, the thing is, first is you should think that it helps us to prioritize our choice. Second thing is, in what way it helps us to prioritize our choice? What would be the answer, Shruti? In what way it helps us to prioritize our choice?
Sir, what we want to produce, what we want to supply, and so on.
What we want to produce, think of in terms of the consumer. Uh, then what would be your priority?
Sir, uh, sir, objectives.
Yeah, given the discussion we have had so far, let's say, so there are two parties. The first is the consumer, and the second is
Yes,
the
sir.
producer. So for the
Yes, sir.
consumer, if you want to prioritize your what as a consumer,
Yes, sir.
are you able to hear me,
Uh,
Shruti?
yes, yes, sir.
Why don't you switch on your video? Yeah, Shruti. Yeah, so
Hello.
yeah, so we want to. If you
Yes,
are
sir.
a consumer, then what you want to do? Prioritize your what?
Sir,
Anyone else?
sir, my
Yeah.
sir, what I want, according to my income, what can I afford, and what is my basic demand,
Yeah, so
so I
according to
can.
your income, how do I prioritize my consumption basket? Do I buy more eggs, or do I buy more vegetable, or do I buy more, let's say, white goods? So I need to prioritize my spending, and this spending prioritization comes in terms of the satisfaction I'm getting, So the moment you tell me that, well, between egg and chicken, I'm actually buying chicken, given the money income, it is basically telling me, what it is telling me, that Shruti has more preference for chicken. And when I use the word more preference, basically what I'm saying, that for this particular money income, Shruti feels that if she were to consume chicken, she will get more satisfaction than consuming eggs.
Yes, sir.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Shrestha, now let's try to think from the perspective of a producer. So if you want to prioritize, how will you prioritize your spending?
As a producer,
Yeah, because
I think judging and knowing the market, and probably kind of making a list and jotting down their needs, but also jotting down their wants and keeping a balance between them, and then trying to produce what the consumer wants.
no, but did you hear when we were discussing about how Mukesh Ambani is planning to pan out his investment decision?
Yes, sir.
So can you repeat that example? What was there in that example that we are trying to argue? So basically, uh, Saurabh, so from the perspective of producer, what is that one thing that we are trying to understand?
So somewhere we are trying to understand
Sir,
what scare in the society means. What is society needed? So scarcity, I think, is the main reason for the producer to produce anything.
No, but on what basis? That is something I was discussing over the last few minutes. So if Mukesh,
sir, can I?
yeah, Aditya, please.
I think, sir, it's important for the producer to understand what product has the highest demand.
Yeah,
And
what
according to
product
that,
has
they
highest
can
demand is
utilize
that,
the resources.
yeah, what product has highest demand, that is also what uh, Shrestha was trying to argue. So basically, it boils down from the perspective of producer. If you are thinking of in terms of Mukesh Ambani, do I invest more in geo platform or do I invest more in oil and gas refinery? If
So
Mukesh
in order
Ambani
to look for the
feels,
profit.
yeah, if Mukesh Ambani feels that the marginal return, please understand this. If Mukesh Ambani feels that the marginal return from one additional dollar investment in Reliance Jio platform is going to give him more return as compared to
Investment.
investing in, let's say, oil and gas refinery, he is going to actually invest in Reliance Jio platform. So for instance, if he perceive that investing in Reliance Jio platform is going to give him a return of 10% vis-a-vis investing over at, let's say, oil and gas refinery, which is going to give him a return of 2%, then very clearly you can understand from the perspective of business decision making, he needs to prioritize his investment strategy towards Reliance Jio platform and less towards oil and gas refinery. Now, you guys have also mentioned that when the producer are actually investing, they are keeping in mind what the consumer demand is like. This is something you just now said. Now, please understand this consumer demand. If the consumer demand is higher, let's say that I'm looking for the consumer demand for two types of industry. Okay, the first is Reliance Jio, and the second is oil and gas. Now, if the consumer demand for Reliance Jio is greater than oil and gas, what it implies is the marginal return from investing in Jio platform is going to be higher compared to the marginal return from, because the demand for that particular product is higher for Reliance Jio as opposed to uh, the oil and gas. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Any other question?
Sir, can you explain it once again?
Which portion did you not
This
understand?
Reliance Jio greater than oil and gas one, the
Okay,
marginal
let's
returns.
let's let's say that see, even Mukesh Ambani is sitting on ports of wealth, but when it comes to investment, he has certain amount of money that he can invest, right? So let's assume that Mukesh Ambani is planning to invest 100 billion US dollar, and this 100 billion US dollar, he has he has n number of options. But for the simplicity of this class, so that you guys understand, I'm just assuming that he has only two options. Do I invest in Reliance Jio platform, or do I, because the other business which Reliance is well known for is oil and gas refinery. So the second option is, do I build another refinery so that I can import crude oil and refine it and I start exporting it, right? So given these two choices, you would see that going by the trend, he is now investing more and more in the Reliance Jio platform. Now, coming from a smart businessman like him, what it tells you, he foresee that the marginal dollar, because you are investing $100 billion, so at the end of the day, I'm going to get a return from that $100 billion. So what he is assuming, that the investment of that $100 billion on Reliance Jio platform is going to yield him more return, let's say 10% return, as opposed to investing in the oil and gas refinery kind of thing. And therefore, from the perspective of producer, because earlier we are thinking that coconut example which I just now gave, we were thinking from the perspective of consumer. But even from the perspective of producer, you can prioritize where to put your money. I will give you another example. Let's say that you are the government, and you can think the government has tons and tons of money, because in India the size of our economy is close to 8.87 trillion US dollar, and government can afford to spend, and I mean it has got a big, what the big deal, government can actually ask central bank to print more money, or it can actually spend more money. But even then, from the perspective of microeconomics, government need to prioritize. Do I spend more on health? Do I spend more on, let's say, education? Do I spend more on, let's say, on sanitation? Do I spend more on, let's say, government administration? So these are the priority, because each one of this activity, whatever you do, comes with a cost, and there is also an associate benefit. Now, when I say you need to prioritize from the perspective of economy, basically what I'm trying to argue is as follows, that I need to spend on that activity where I perceive the marginal return to the additional dollar spent is maximum. Any question?
Yes.
Likewise, if you are a consumer, when you spend in such a fashion so that the return from consuming that goods and services, you think you are getting the maximum amount of satisfaction. For instance, on that hot summer day example that I was trying to give you, compared to that bottle of coconut water, nothing could come to you as more pricey, because at that point of time, when you are very tired, when you are looking around to quench your thirst, the only thing which matter to you is the bottle of coconut water. It's not even, let's say, any other things. So basically, in terms of satisfaction, in terms of priority, when we are talking in terms of the consumer, we are thinking in terms of the utility. When we are thinking in terms of the producer, it is still the utility. But the utility in what way? Utility in terms of, because what gives more satisfaction to an industrialist? It is the amount of money he or she makes, right? So if she or he can invest on that activity where the marginal return from investment is highest, he gets the maximum satisfaction. Are you getting? So so the keywords that you should remember in microeconomics are as follows. The first is, we are dealing with resources which are scarce in nature. We are dealing in a world where more is better. But more is better does not necessarily imply that the more is better is not in the marginal sense. The more is better is in the sense that more goods is better than less number of units of output. But at the same time, when we decide that whether we should continue to have that amount of more goods and services, the thing that should come to our mind is how much price we are willing to pay for acquiring that goods and services, and that amount of price we are paying, is that amount of price is less than the amount of benefit that I am getting. Now please understand, let me rephrase this one more time, because at the end of the day, a consumer is also like a businessman. When I said that for the first unit of coconut water you are willing to shell out, let's say in Delhi, 50 rupees per unit of coconut water because you are very thirsty. For the second unit, do you think you are going to shell out more than 50 rupees or less than 50 rupees or 50 rupees?
So less than 50.
Why less than 50 rupees?
So because my marginal satisfaction will decrease from the
Very good.
product, like the value
Yes.
addition, and henceforth the cost, which the perceived cost basically or value of the product will decrease.
Very good. So for the second unit, you are always going to negotiate for a lesser amount of price, because the amount of benefit that you are perceiving from consuming that same type of good, for the second unit, your marginal satisfaction is less compared to what you have got while consuming the first unit, and therefore you are going to ask or be willing to pay a lesser price. Likewise, for the third unit, you are going to even offer a even more lesser price, and this process will continue until the time when the seller refuses to sell his product to you, because at that point of time the seller feels that for his investment to make any sense, he should not be willing to sell at a price less than that equilibrium price, and that is what we are calling the equilibrium price. Equilibrium price is the price at which the demand for any commodity in terms of marginal utility equals to the supply of any commodity. And I will showcase in the next class that whenever we are talking about supply, basically we are talking about it's a marginal cost of production. Because even when Reliance is, let's say, offering you Reliance Jio data card, so Reliance company has had made some investment, and therefore there is a cost of supplying. So if the cost of supplying is greater than what the consumer are willing to pay, then that business, does it make sense or it doesn't make sense? Let me repeat, if the cost of supply a particular goods and services is more than what the consumer are willing to pay, do you think that business uh, entity is going to make profit or not?
No, sir. No
Yes, sir.
problem.
No, they
Yes,
won't make a profit.
they
No,
won't
sir.
make they won't make a profit, and therefore at the equilibrium, the amount of money that the consumer is willing to pay should be equal to the amount of money that the producer are willing to sell. So because if the consumer think that he is getting a bargain, he is getting something on bargain, he is getting some product at a uh, cheaper price. Again, cheaper price means the moment. So let's try to see, Harshit, what do you think when I say cheaper price? Can you try to explain in the way we were dealing?
So I didn't get you. Can you please?
So when I say cheaper price, what does it imply?
Cheaper price.
Yeah. Were you able to follow the discussion we have had so far?
Yes, sir.
Can you just explain to us what we are discussing and why we are discussing? Very shortly.
So actually, we generally, so as a consumer, I'm telling from the perspective of a consumer. So
Right.
we tend to compare the perceived cost of the product
Uh-huh.
with the perceived value of the product
Right.
as a consumer.
Right.
So the perceived value, it tends to go down, like the marginal perceived value of the
Uh-huh.
product from the product that we get, the utility, it
Uh.
tends to move downwards as we increase the quantity of that product
Mm.
as a consumer, like consumption of that product. And due to that, as the value is decreasing for us as a consumer, we tend to pay less for that specific product.
Okay. Very good.
So, so
Yeah.
we, so we just compare both of these, and henceforth, the law of diminishing marginal returns is applied here,
Right.
and that's
So
what
this
I understand. But
this point
yeah,
is very well taken. This is from the perspective of the consumer. What about from the
right.
perspective of producer? Let's say
So
let's say that you are an
yeah,
entrepreneur. Let's say you are a
right,
businessman. So
right.
how will you see the scenario from your perspective as a business owner, not as a
So it
consumer?
will, right, it will so go like in that case, sir, we'll compare the investment with the earnings, let's say.
Right.
Like, yeah, instead of the value and the other part.
So in this case, you have correctly said two very important words: investment with earning. So the earning is
Right.
like equivalent of satisfaction or utility that the consumer is getting. So that is the
Yes.
synonymous with the earning from the perspective of businessman. And investment is basically the amount of price that the business owner is willing to pay in, because at the end of the day, when the businessman is investing, he has got something in mind, that he is expecting some return from that investment. Otherwise, he's not rational, right? No one will invest just like that,
Right. Yes, sir.
Of course, if you are talking about the government, because someone mentioned also about the welfare, we will also showcase some instances where we find that government as a welfare state invest without actually thinking too much about the return, because that is a different connotation that we will deal later in a macroeconomic sense. But in
Yes, sir.
microeconomics, as per going by the classical school of thought, your investment, you are going to invest in such a fashion so that the marginal return from investment is going to be maximum for the first unit of investment. Like you have a diminishing return for your consumption, you also have a diminishing return for your investment. Because if you are investing on the same activity over and over again, then the marginal return from that investment keeps on falling. And we will discuss about that, but in a very simple way, as the organization grow bigger and bigger, then what happens is you cannot micromanage, and therefore some of the investment decision can also go wrong, which happens with all the big companies. So therefore, for instance, I'll just give you an example, and with that we'll end today's class. When Tata bought Chorus, and Tata actually paid a much higher price than the perceived return from investing in Chorus, and that is something what we call winner's curse, and that we will discuss again later. But winner curse is saying that, let's say you like to acquire some activity, you like it so much, you are going to overstate the inherent price, and therefore you are going to pay more price than what the that particular project is going to yield over a period of time, and you tend to make a loss. So I will stop here. If you have any
Sir,
question, please feel free to ask, and please read
sir,
the first chapter, because the
I
this
have
yeah.
confused.
So yeah, just 1 minute. So the first chapter actually covered all this thing. For instance, scarcity. For instance, utility. For instance, production possibility frontier. This is something that we are going to discuss tomorrow. Uh, for instance, we are also going to see that the shape of the production possibility frontier. We are going to also argue that how much an economy can produce depends upon the resources it has, and things like that. So again, please, and I'm yet to actually form this group. I will soon form a group, and I will share with all of you, so that you can also start doing group discussion. Because otherwise you will tend to forget what we are discussing in the class. Yeah. Now question. Please ask question.
Sir, when actually my question is, my confusion is from the point when we were discussing we were comparing the geo and oil and gas divisions of Reliance.
Yes. So that's an
So,
example
sir,
which I was trying to give. Yeah.
yes, sir. So there actually, when we were looking at the marginal returns,
Hmm.
so we decided that geo will be a better investment
Hmm.
from the terms of the owners of Reliance.
Hmm.
But sir, I had a confusion that compared to Geo and the like a network being a network provider,
Hmm.
oil and gas is a commodity which will fetch them more money, and it is more costly than what the consumers of oil and gas will pay more money compared to the customers who are taking the Geo SIM or any Geo facility. So the returns will be, according to me, I might be wrong, will be more in the oil and gas sector compared to Geo.
No, so
And
I'll tell you. So it's not as simple as you are trying to portray. Whenever we please remember the word keyword marginal, meaning that Reliance have got 1,000, let's say $100 billion. Now, whether this oil and gas refinery business is going to be more beneficial depends upon what is the key factor, what would be the price of oil as an output. Now, if you see the world price of oil, it is not increasing, you know, and thanks to uh, all this technology, they are actually there are lots of tracking technology which are available, which basically says the US oil companies such as Shell and others, they can actually produce oil at a much cheaper price, because now the technology has enabled them to produce oil at a cheaper price. Not only that, now you also have substitute available for oil, which is solar energy and other form of clean energy. So therefore, you see that the demand for fossil fuel is over a period of time is falling. And to counter that, you also have this Elon Musk, this Tesla. I'm sure you have heard this. They are going to bring out all this energy, electric vehicles. So as and when the electric vehicles comes and hit the market, maybe 5 or 6 years down the line, the demand for oil will fall even further. You know, and as an astute businessman, Mukesh Ambani knows about this game much, much better than what you and me know, and
Yes, sir.
therefore you see that. But if you see the internet penetration, that is what I was trying to argue. In India, it is still one of the least among the big, large economies. And therefore, what he thought is, if I somehow can capture this new market, the return from investment in Reliance Jio will be much, much more, because it's a revenue maximizing game, because we are talking about 1.3 billion population. Of course, each and every one will not be going for Reliance Jio, but even if I have 20% or 30% of that big population, it's a huge market. It's more than the size of, let's say, the European market put together. And therefore, I can actually maximize my return from investment. And that is the thought process which might have gone in the mind of an astute businessman like Mukesh Ambani. And therefore, from the perspective of microeconomics, his thought process, and therefore what we are seeing as an outcome, which is he is investing more in Reliance Jio. And why do you think that other fund managers, they are picking up their stake in Reliance Jio? Over the last 6 months, if you follow what has been happening with the Reliance Jio, I don't know whether some of you are investing in stock market, but let's say that you have invested on Reliance share sometime in first of week of April. Between now and then, the it was trading, if I'm not mistaken, around 900 rupees. Now it is trading, even after this correction, today the price is around 1900. It went up as much as to 2400. So even with this correction, you are seeing a return of 80%. Do you think that people who are investing, they are fool? They have seen an opportunity and they are buying it. So all I'm trying to say is, what is the thought process behind this investment, or the people who are investing? The thought process is, I should be able to maximize my return from investment. And therefore there you see that all these tech stocks, even if you invest in stock market, just for the sake of argument, do you like to invest in some old school type stocks, like brick and mortar stocks, let's say Coal India? Let's say I give you two options: invest in Coal India vis-a-vis invest in, let's say, Infosys. You don't have to believe me in what I'm saying. You just
The Infosys.
yeah. The answer is obvious, because now you are into the cloud computing, you are into the technology, and technology is the name of the game. So you'd like to invest in some stocks which are technology savvy. For instance, Bajaj Finance. At any point of time, it is going to give you much more return than compared to the let's say whole India of the world. Uh, so so all I'm trying to argue is, I'm not arguing that why they have done. I'm saying that the reason why they have done, because they feel the perceived return from investing in that particular bet which they have taken, they think that is going to give them more return compared to others. Does it make sense?
Yes, sir.
Any other question?
No, sir.
Okay then. So let's meet tomorrow, and we'll carry forward the discussion. Please try to have a look in the first chapter of this thing. Okay? All the best. Bye bye.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.